Hi again, this is Sandy. Welcome back to tutorial video number 7 for my Nostalgia Pop-Up Christmas album using Authentique's Nostalgia Paper Collection for Country Craft Creations. Today we're going to create the album cover and add the pages that are already on their hinges into the cover. So let's get started. To create the album cover, you need to cut from chipboard 2 pieces 6 1/2 inches by 6 1/2 inches and 1 piece that's 2 3/4 inches by 6 1/2 inches. And from the cardstock, cut 1 8 1/2 inches by 12 inches, 1 8 1/2 inches by 6 1/2 inches, and 2 that are 6 inches by 8 inches. Take the 8 1/2 by 12 inch piece of cardstock and the 8 1/2 by 6 1/2 inch piece of cardstock and seam them together to create one long piece. You'll do this along the 8 1/2 inch side. I prefer to use the art glitter glue. Press it down and burnish really well, which almost eliminates the seam, but we're going to create the cover so that this seam will be on the back side. If you use the score tape sheets to assemble your covers, go ahead and attach the score tape sheets to one side of each of the chipboard pieces that you cut. Next, take your ruler and a pencil, and on the left side of your cardstock paper that's for your cover, go ahead and mark a line, a placement line, about 3/4 of an inch from the left side, and then also mark one on the bottom at 3/4 of an inch. This is to help you place your chipboard pieces down straight. So I'm going to take the first one and peel off this backing and place it down along those two lines with it in the corner there on the left bottom corner. So this gives us enough margin all the way around to wrap the edges of our cover with this black artisan cardstock that you can order from countrycraftcreations.com. You can also order your score tape sheets from countrycraftcreations.com. Next, take your 1/4 inch score tape and we're going to put down a spacer and put it down onto the cardstock right up against the chipboard edge. Not on the chipboard, but on the cardstock. So we're just going to put that in there as a spacer. I like to keep my chipboard pieces for the covers at least 1/4 of an inch apart so that it doesn't crack and bend and tear. The artisan cardstock's really good about not cracking and tearing, but I still like to leave the space. So next, take your spine chipboard, attach it down, add another spacer, and attach down your final chipboard piece for the cover. Turn it over and then burnish on the back side to make sure that everything sticks down good. You want to make sure your score tape is stuck down good and that it's smooth. And now we're going to fold these cardstock edges up over along the edge of the chipboard. This is to get our fold line for wrapping. If you need to stand it up, it makes it a little bit easier. And just get a good fold line there along each edge. Now you can attach this the edges of your cardstock down onto the chipboard with either glue or score tape. I think I'm going to use a combination. I'm going to use the score tape, and then I'm also going to use a line of glue along the edge right up against the chipboard. So go ahead and burnish these lines down good. Get a good fold. And also by burnishing this gives you the marks on the corners that you're going to miter. So there's different ways of mitering. You use whatever you're comfortable with to miter your cardstock. I'm going to cut out the corners, and then I'm going to fold the edges over and then miter at an angle, slight angle, all four corners of this cardstock that's going to wrap around my chipboard. So also, so you don't forget, go ahead and remove the backing of your spacer guides. If you're going to use score tape as your adhesive to attach your cardstock down onto the chipboard, go ahead and put your score tape down. I'm doing this before I cut out the corners of my cardstock, so I'm going to just put it down from the edge of the chipboard all the way across the top edge of this cardstock. So see, I'm not putting tape on the sections that I will be cutting out. So go ahead and do all your tape if you're using the score tape. So I'm using the 1/2 inch on the top and then a 1/4 inch along the bottom edge of the cardstock. I went ahead and cut the corners out, so now mine looks like this with the corners out, and now I'm folding it over the cardstock over, and I'm just going to put my scissors at the edge of the chipboard and do an angle cut on each section, on each end of the cardstock before I actually stick it down. So again, just put your scissors there, the base of them at the chipboard, and then cut in at a slight angle. Once you have angle cut all of your ends, working on one side at a time, go ahead and remove your tape backing, and then you will add a line of glue onto the cardstock right up against the chipboard, and then fold down and burnish, and make sure you gently burnish into the fold lines between the spine and the cover and the back cover, so that it sticks down into that spacing score tape that you've already pulled the backing off. Our cover is nicely wrapped, and now we're ready to add cardstock into the center sections on the inside. So you have two pieces that you cut that are 6 inch by 8 inch, and you're going to glue these down onto the inside of the cover. So I'm just putting glue on the first one. If you want to use your score tape sheets, that's perfectly fine. You can also use that too if you want to. I'm just going to use glue here on the inside. And you want the 6 inch height to be from top to bottom. So center that top to bottom. It should be about at maybe a 1/4 inch from the left edge, and a 1/4 inch from the top, and a 1/4 inch from the bottom. Get it on its as straight as possible, and be sure to burnish down to make sure it sticks well, and wipe off any excess glue that might come out when you're burnishing. So this first piece is on the left. You'll see that it ends there, kind of in this, almost in the center of the spine section, and that is where we want it to end. because that's going to be covered up, so you're not going to see this seam. And then gently burnish into that fold line again to get this inside cover paper down into the score tape that are on each side of the spine. So I'm just going to overlap just a tiny bit here in this spine section and get this also 1/4 of an inch from the right side and match it up top to bottom with the other piece. Now we're ready to work on the spine section and get ready to put our page into the album. So from cardstock, cut 2 that are 1 3/4 inches by 6 inches. Cut from pattern paper 1 that's 5 1/2 by 6 and 1 that's 2 3/4 inches by 6. So the 6 inch would be the length of it, with the other one being the width. So go ahead and cut those. So grab your page sets. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to glue pattern paper. We're going to glue the wide one that we just cut. I call these the hinge spine attachment stability pieces, and it also covers the black cardstock. So we wanted this to be patterned, so you need one that's 5 1/2 by 6. Go ahead and ink the edges, especially the top and the bottom edge, and line this up in your scoreboard on your mat. This will help you get your position right. So you want the 6 inch edge to be up and down. This is where the 6 inch spine section, the length of the 6 inches, is going to fit, and you're going to center this. So I'm just seeing where my center is using the ruler on my score pal. And these other pieces of cardstock that we cut are going to be the stability pieces that's going to give extra strength to this spine section. So these glue on each side. So I'm just checking those to make sure that they fit there. So the measurements for these were in your cutting guide that I gave prior to this segment. So these narrow cardstock pieces are 1 3/4 inches by 6 inches long. So I'm applying glue to the back of the spine of the page sets. Apply a good amount of glue. If you want to use score tape, you can also do that if you're more comfortable with using the score tape in case you need to lift it off with undo. I am using the glue, so I'm checking where I'm going to put my first one down, and I'm going to line it up straight at the top and then burnish it first with my fingers to get it stuck down good, and then the other side as well. And then you will open it up and burnish on the inside the best that you can. Now what this does is it puts the spine section of the pages down onto the pattern paper with wings on each side of the pattern paper. Then we're going to cover that with the cardstock to make it stronger before we actually put this into our album. Now, why did I not just make the spine section longer and score it and put it in? I think that having these extra layers of the pattern paper and the cardstock together will make it stronger versus having just a fold, because we have the strength of the spine there in the center, and then we're gluing this down onto it, and that's going to strengthen that rather than being a fold that bends back and forth. So I'm applying glue, and then I'm going to glue this excuse me, cardstock piece down over the pattern and get it on straight up against the page set. So you may have a little space there, about a 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 of an inch space from the actual pages, and that's okay. So just burnish that down and then also do the other side. So yes, it is covering the pattern paper on this side, but I didn't want to cut the pattern paper. I wanted to use it for some of the strength combined with the cardstock. So I'm just turning it around so that I can see it better on my right side, and I'm going to glue this second piece down. Now we have our spine section and our pages ready to go in the album. Now these two wings will be glued into the album on the left and the right. The center will not, of the spine, will not be glued down onto your spine of your album. We're going to leave that loose so that these pages will open easier for these pop-up elements. So before we add that in, let's take our other pattern piece of paper that was cut at 2 3/4 inches by 6 inches, and we're going to glue that down into just the center of the spine here over the black cardstock. Go ahead and burnish your lines gently. Again, your fold lines of your cover, and in this area in between, where's the spine, is where we're going to glue this next piece of pattern paper. This is to make it pretty in there when you look down into the spine area from the top or the bottom of the album. So line it up top to bottom with the cardstock that you've already attached down. So it's going to be about 1/4 inch from the top, 1/4 inch from the bottom. Center it, make sure that it doesn't go over your cover fold lines, and burnish. Now we're ready to put that page set in there into this album. Now I'm going to use score tape, and I'm applying it down onto the album cover. The reason I'm using score tape is because if I get it down crooked, I can use undo to remove the page sets from the cover and straighten them up. So I'm going to do this on both sides. I'm using a 1/2 inch score tape. I put one down on each side of the spine, and you want to cut it so that it's just within the 6-inch section of the cover, and make sure you're not covering up your fold line of the cover. So you see I've got a space there from the pattern paper so that I'm not covering that up. So this is going to fit in here. So we're gluing from the left side the score tape out on both of these pieces. These wings we are not gluing on the center. Keep your center unglued. No tape, no glue on the center. So I'm going to put score tape on the outer edges of this pattern paper, on the pattern paper side, the back side of the spine of the page sets. And again, if you wanted to use glue, you can. Burnish the tape down. I'm just checking to make sure that that gives me enough adhesive to hold these down, and I think it'll be okay. If you're more comfortable with it, you could add a little bit of glue in between the score tape on one side of on the back side of the spine. I'm just double checking to see how it's going to fit. So I'm going to pull off the tape backing on both the spine piece and on the cover on the inside here, and I'm just checking to see where my seam piece is. You want that on your right because that's the back of your album cover, where the seam of the cardstock is on the back side. So pull your tape off and line this up. I'm going to use the guide of my mat here, the grids, kind of get that straight, and very carefully make sure your front of your pages is going to your left. Line this up. This is 6 inches long. You want to line it up with the paper that you've already lined the inside of your cover with, and the printed paper is also 6 inches that's in the spine. So line it up carefully, and once you've got it down, burnish with your hands one side at a time. So I'm just looking at it to make sure I've got it lined up. and then attach it down. This is a really tricky part, so just take your time, be real patient with it, don't hurry it. Get those in as straight as you can. Mine are stuck down, so now I'm burnishing with my bone folder the flap. Gently burnish into the fold again of your cover because you want it to fold up. Burnish up against the page, that little section there up against it. Do this on both sides. Gently burnish. Check to make sure that it still will fold up. Burnish some more in that fold line. You've kind of got to train the paper to fold right there where it needs to be. So that's working good. So you've got the space there of the spine. We have our pages in the album cover, and that concludes video number 7 for the tutorial. Check back for number 8.